You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today, after getting punched in the mouth with picks last week, I am back again to go over my picks for week number 8 of the NFL. I went 4-9 last week. It was a very humbling experience to go through, I will say, but as we do every week, we're going to make these picks. We're banking on a good week here. Let's shoot for double-digit victories, and we begin with the Thursday night football matchup with the Buccaneers and Buffalo Bills. So make sure you comment down below. Let me know your picks. What's your record this season? What do you like about the matchups this week? All of that in that comment section. But this Thursday night matchup with the Buffalo Bills and Tampa Bay Buccaneers here. Both of these teams coming in with honestly some questions from both sides. The Buccaneers were once 3-1 and are now on a 2-game losing skid, and the Buffalo Bills are coming off of a massive upset loss to their division rival New England Patriots, one that I don't think a lot of people expected and one that I don't think the Bills themselves saw coming. Baker Mayfield's coming into this game with a knee injury, but it does sound like he's going to play, and Vita Vea is another guy on the Buccaneers roster that also sounds like he's a bit up in the air. Sounds like he's 50-50, kind of a game time decision, whereas the Bills come in. Ed Oliver is questionable, and of course they obviously have big injuries with guys like Daquan Jones, Matt Milano, and Trey White on the defense, and you also have Dawson Knox and Quentin Morris, so 2 tight ends for the Buffalo Bills injured in this matchup here. Both sides have some injuries to look at here, but as far as the actual matchup goes here, both of these defenses are very good at keeping their opponents out of the end zone. When you look at points allowed per game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are sitting at 6th in the NFL with just over 17 points, whereas the Buffalo Bills themselves are just under the 17 mark at 16.9, and they are 5th in the NFL right now. But there is a very big discrepancy in who scores. When you look at the Bills, they're a team averaging over 28 points a game, and Tampa Bay hovering around 17 right now. So there is a big kind of discrepancy as far as scoring is concerned on the offensive side of the football. And on top of that, this is a really good matchup for the Buffalo Bills as far as passing goes. The Bills have one of the more prolific passing offenses in the NFL right now. They are 6th best there. And Tampa Bay, they let teams move the ball through the air. They're allowing almost 250 yards per game right now. They're currently ranked 27th. So there is a really good opportunity there for Buffalo to go back to its bread and butter, the passing game led by Josh Allen, to allow him and Stephon Diggs to hook up and make some plays, maybe get Dalton Kincaid involved, their rookie tight end, especially considering you have so many injuries there. And it'll be interesting to see how they attack this Buccaneers defense, but I think it is going to be through the air with just how much they do let opponents move. I think one thing to keep an eye on, though, really is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' ability to create turnovers in this matchup. They are a team that loves to force the turnover. And when you look at the Buffalo Bills, I mean, they're a team right now that's kind of struggling as far as turnovers are concerned. They have a fair amount this season, and with Tampa Bay being 3rd best in the NFL with 13 total forced turnovers, this is a game where if Josh Allen and company are forcing errors or just making mistakes, someone's not hanging on to the football, whatever the issue may be, I could see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming into Buffalo and maybe stealing a win. But I do have the Bills winning this matchup. I have them winning 21-14. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a defensive contest here. For what it's worth, the Bills defense, I feel like maybe has taken a slight step back with the amount of injuries they're dealing with, which is, of course, kind of expected with what they have going on defensively. But ultimately, Buccaneers have a solid defense. I could see them maybe getting a turnover or two and keeping the game close, but the offensive issues right now that Tampa Bay is kind of dealing with the way they've slowed down has me a little bit concerned, and I do think that the Buffalo Bills should be able to, like I said, take advantage of that passing defense and be able to move the football fairly effectively. So give me the Bills on Thursday Night Football. Should be a fun matchup to watch, though, nonetheless. Moving into Sunday, looking at the early window, we'll start things off with the Los Angeles Rams and the Dallas Cowboys here. Both teams coming in relatively healthy. Not any massive injuries recently to talk about. Of course, Cowboys missing both cornerback Trayvon Diggs and linebacker Leighton Vander Esch, and those are probably the most notable names as far as injuries are concerned on both sides of the game here. As for the Cowboys, for them, they're better when it comes to scoring. They're better when it comes to keeping teams out of the end zone. Rams are middle of the pack in both. For the Cowboys, they're top 5 in both. this is a matchup that does favor Dallas, and the game is in Dallas on top of that. We've seen some hiccups offensively from the Rams. We've also seen some hiccups from the Cowboys offensively. This is not by any means, I would say, kind of a runaway type game for the Dallas Cowboys in here. I do think with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and an offensive line that's been pretty strong in the run game here for the Rams, they can definitely put up a fight here, and I think they can keep it close. But we've seen some of the issues. We've seen some really rare just like misconnects with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford, and maybe that's just knocking the rust off and trying to get back in sync. But I do think that when you look at this game here, the big thing you really want to look at here is going to be the Cowboys pass rush against a Rams offensive line that has been leaky at times. They've allowed 18 sacks this season, and when you look at the Cowboys and what they've done, while they're not quite as dominant as they initially looked early in the season, they are still getting pressure on 21% roughly of dropbacks, which is 23rd in the NFL. Not anything crazy. They're closer to the bottom half than they are the top, but they do have 16 sacks, which puts them right in the middle of the pack, tied for 15th with a handful of teams. So that'll probably be the biggest factor as far as this game goes, is how does this pass rush from Dallas look against a Rams O-line that has been at times, like I said, leaky. I will say that I'm leaning more towards the Cowboys in this game, though, especially with it being in Dallas. So I'm going to take the Cowboys, and I have them winning 26-20. I don't think it's going to be a dominant win by any means. I think it should be a fairly close contest here, and the Rams could hang on late. But after watching the way the Rams struggled against the Steelers just last week, I do have some reservations about their offense at the very moment. So I like Dallas a little bit more, especially the game being in Dallas. It leans more towards the Cowboys. Give them the win 26-20. Now we look at an NFC North matchup here between the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers, with this one being at Lambeau Field. The Packers sitting at 2-4 right now, as the Minnesota Vikings are coming off of a massive victory over the 49ers this past week and are currently sitting at 3-4. So both teams with losing records, Vikings having an extra win because they have not had a bye yet. Now, looking at this game here, injuries first. The Packers list is just, it's so long. It really is. I mean, we're looking at Jair Alexander, Devondre Campbell, Josh Myers, Elton Jenkins, Josh Neiman, Aaron Jones, and Luke Musgrave, all currently listed as questionable. And that's not to mention guys like Eric Stokes, who's still coming back from his injury. He's on the IR, did not participate in practice on Wednesday. I don't think it's likely we see him in the game, but he's working his way back. But he's still on the IR. David Bakhtiari obviously has been out. The offensive line for Green Bay is in shambles right now, and the defense is dealing with a lot of injuries as well, especially some key guys like Campbell and Alexander. I just have a really hard time buying with the trajectory that these two teams kind of feel like they're on right now, that Green Bay comes away with the victory. Now, obviously, I could be completely wrong, as we saw last week, but I cannot stress enough just how much I look at Minnesota right now, who obviously started off the season rough, but feels like they're trending in the right direction, whereas Green Bay started off much better than the Vikings would and are kind of now trending down. They're just heading in two complete opposite directions here. You saw the emergence of Jordan Addison last week and the absence of Justin Jefferson. I really think that just the health of Green Bay being such a big concern is kind of a big factor going into this matchup here, especially on that offensive line. The Vikings themselves, as far as the pass rush goes, they have 19 sacks in the season, which puts them in the top half of the NFL. They're getting pressure on 24.4% of dropbacks, which puts them in the top 15 at 13th. They could take advantage of an offense in Green Bay that's struggling, that's also full of youth, that does not feel like they're all on the same page right now. And I think the Vikings could go in and steal a victory in Lambeau, and I have them winning 23-20. Good game between both. I do think that we're going to see some, especially I would assume maybe we see Jair Alexander and or Devondre Campbell in this game here. They've been dealing with an injury for the last few weeks now. I think maybe we get at least one of them back for Green Bay, but I do think that Vikings hang on. Jordan Addison, I think we're going to see more and more of him. He's a guy that I was really high on coming out of the draft, and I thought him going to Minnesota was the best possible scenario, getting to learn alongside Justin Jefferson, not having the pressure as wide receiver one, and being able to learn more from and improve his craft from someone like Justin Jefferson. And now he gets his opportunity to shine at about the midpoint in the season. So I'm excited to see how this game goes down here, because it's a pick 'em. It's anyone's game realistically. You're in Green Bay, but Vikings are trending a little bit better right now than I'd say Green Bay, so give me the Vikings. Now we look at the Atlanta Falcons and Tennessee Titans here. This one going to be in Tennessee. Falcons sitting at 4-3, albeit a frustrating team at 4-3. And the Tennessee Titans, who could potentially be looking to sell off some pieces after already making a big move earlier this week and sending Byard over to the Philadelphia Eagles in a trade. Now, here's the deal. Injury-wise, Falcons, fairly clean bill of health. With the loss of Byard now in the back end of your secondary, on top of that, you're also dealing with questionables, including Aaron Brewer, Roger McCreary, Josh Wiley, and Chris Moore. The Titans are kind of dealing with it in a lot of different places right now. Both of these teams, very similar as far as offensive production goes and defensive production in terms of points per game allowed and scored. Falcons sitting at 29th in the NFL with about 16.5 points a game. Titans not too far ahead at about 17.5 themselves, so about a point more. Then when you look at defensively, Falcons take the advantage on this one, allowing about 19 points a game, whereas the Titans sitting at about 19.5, so slight advantage Falcons. I will say that I do think overall the Falcons defense is a little bit better though, especially health-wise, and on top of that, they're both top 5 teams when it comes to red zone percentage and keeping teams out of the end zone. This is going to be a defensive slugfest. Neither team really forces many turnovers, but the Falcons are a team that are prone to ending up turning the ball over in the most ludicrous of ways and in some of the worst situations possible, and is kind of the reason why they're only 4-3. If they could just eliminate the turnovers, I think this Falcons team would be in a much better spot, but it really comes down to Desmond Ridder, some of the interceptions he's thrown, and just some ball control issues we've seen as well. Falcons defense, though, is a really tough group to go up against, and with it sounding like Ryan Tannehill is not going to be playing, it sounds like we get Malik Willis and or Will Levis at some point in that game, and I don't know how those two young men are going to face against what has been a really impressive Falcons defense this point in the season, and honestly could be better if they got some help from their offense. So with that, I think the Falcons come into Tennessee. I think they get a victory 20-17. Like I said, defensive slugfest. I don't think we're going to see a lot of points here. It's going to be a grind to get to the very end of this game here, but I think the Falcons can squeak out a couple extra points and get that 3-point victory. Now we look at the New Orleans Saints as they head into Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Both teams are currently sitting at 3-3. The Saints come in with some significant injuries to keep in mind here. Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, Ryan Ramczyk, Alvin Kamara, and Taysom Hill are all currently listed as questionable, whereas the Colts, Braden Smith, Juju Brents, their rookie corner, and Zach Moss are all listed as questionable themselves. This could potentially be a breakout game for Jonathan Taylor. With Zach Moss being injured and dealing right now with an issue, it could mean that we get to see even more snaps from Jonathan Taylor as he continues to work his way back as he has the last few weeks. It seems like they're ramping him up more and more, and this could be the week that we finally get him off a snap count, especially if it ends up being a necessary sort of evil with Zach Moss dealing with something right now. And when you look at the Saints, like I said, a lot of injuries not a lot of injuries, but significant injuries, I should say, on defense. Demario Davis and Tyrann Mathieu, two keys to that run D. If both of those guys miss, or let's just say Demario Davis misses, that is significant for a run defense that has been pretty good. They're 12th in the NFL right now, but the Colts themselves have been a strong rushing attack. Offensive line has been doing a great job opening up running lanes for Zach Moss, and now Jonathan Taylor's getting healthier and healthier, and it seems like he's going to be ready to really go this week. I will be very interested in watching this matchup between the Saints' run defense and how the Colts' rushing attack looks. The Saints' struggles offensively as well are something that I'm a little bit concerned about. However, if there was a defense that you want to be able to score against, it's going to be Indianapolis. They're allowing just over 27 points a game, 30th in the NFL. So if there was any game for a team like the Saints to take advantage of, this Colts team would be the one. I mean, just look at what the Browns did last week with their ability to move the football up and down the field. I mean, it's one of those things where it seems like poor offenses can look really good with a shot against Indianapolis. Now, other than that, New Orleans, tough D. Indianapolis themselves, while they have been allowing teams to score, have also been scoring themselves in very unlikely ways. It feels like they basically just took the offense they built for Anthony Richardson and are dropping Gardner Minshew right into it. He had 2 rushing touchdowns last week, so it's definitely one of those things where you can't play assuming he's going to be a pocket passer the entire time. This is a game where Gardner Minshew is playing the offense that the Colts came into the season with. They did not really have to make much adjustments for him. He knows what Shane Steichen likes to do, and it's the offense they want to run. So I think that's that's a massive plus for Indy, and it'll be an interesting game against the Saints defense that has been pretty good when it comes to keeping people out of the end zone. They're allowing only 18 points a game, so that is something to keep in mind. But I do think that I'm erring on the side of the Saints in this game for the victory, and I have them winning 24-17. I just don't buy some of the success that the Colts have been having. And I know it was a really tough loss last week, and a lot of people were arguing officiating and whatnot, but for what it's worth, they still found themselves in that position, not able to stop the Browns' offense by any means, and you wind up losing the game. And I am a firm believer of one call doesn't decide a game. There's a lot of other things the Colts needed to do right defensively in that game, and they did not, and it kind of put them in that situation. So, officiating aside and how the end of that game went, I'm still a little bit concerned, and I just don't know if what the Colts have been doing on offense is sustainable. Even with Jonathan Taylor coming back and we're now kind of seeing an emergence from downs, I just think that on paper, the Saints, talent-wise, are a better team than the Colts, and they should be able to come in and slow things down for Indianapolis. And like I said, Colts defense, not super high on right now. They let teams move and score at will almost at times. So I think the Saints can take advantage. They come in as road warriors, get the victory in Indy, like I said, 24-17. Next, we're looking at the New England Patriots heading into Miami to take on their division rival Dolphins in a matchup that has some wide receiver concerns, honestly, on both ends right now. But the big concern is the Miami Dolphins and their two-star wide receivers, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Both are currently listed as questionable. You also have Raheem Mostert and Javon Holland there, and Teron Armstead obviously being on the IR makes things a little bit shaky for this Dolphins offense that did not look great against the Philadelphia Eagles this past week. Patriots, as far as their injuries go, they actually have a fair amount themselves, both on offense and defense. Trent Brown's currently questionable, Hunter Henry, Josh Uche, Keon White, and then of course they don't have Matt Judon and Marcus Jones, who I believe were both playing in that game against the Dolphins the first time these two teams met here. I don't think that this game is as far apart as what I've seen some of the gambling sites have listed. I believe the Dolphins are -9.5 favorites, or is it 6.5? I don't know. I don't have the numbers written down. I'm not a gambler, but I remember the number being oddly high considering just how close the last game between these two teams are, especially considering the injury concerns with wide receiver right now. Even if the Dolphins are without Tyreek Hill and or Jalen Waddle, I still think it's a really effective group, but if they're missing both, that is a concern. But even if Tyreek Hill can't play or Jalen Waddle can't play with the other, I think they can still be a really effective offense. The ground attack is really good over there in Miami. And on top of that, it's not like Jalen Waddle isn't talented. Tyreek Hill is obviously one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So even if you're missing one or the other, you can still kind of get away with it considering how strong the wide receiver group is over there in Miami. The Patriots, though, had themselves a bit of an offensive breakout last week against the Buffalo Bills. They're looking to build on that against Miami's defense, which has been kind of soft. They're not by any means a great group. I mean, they're 19th in rushing yards allowed. They're 20th in passing yards allowed. They're 27th in points per game allowed. So for a team that is averaging about 14.5 points a game right now in New England, they have an opportunity to take advantage of a fairly soft Miami Dolphins defense here. It really just comes down to containing what Miami does, and if they can keep up. That's kind of how I look at it right now. I mean, they only lost by a touchdown the last time these two teams played, so I really don't think this game is that far apart. And it also feels like defensively, the Patriots might be starting to figure it out despite the injuries that they've already been dealt with the fact that, again, Matthew Judon's not playing, Christian Gonzalez has been missing for some times, Marcus Jones is also out as well. I think this game really comes down to protecting the football with turnovers and also just the wide receiver availability of Miami. The Patriots have 12 turnovers this season. The Dolphins have 10, so both offenses are prone to turning the ball over. Whoever protects the football better, I think, ultimately comes out with the win. And I do think that with a full go of both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, especially considering some of the injuries they're dealing with in the secondary in New England, it could prove to be problematic for them. So I do like the Dolphins in this one here. I'm kind of banking on the health of their wide receiver core and expecting that the Dolphins can play a better game offensively than the Patriots. But I mean, this is, for me, I don't know if the game is as far apart as I've seen some places have it listed as, but I like Miami. Give them the win. I have them 28-23. I think a tighter affair. I think the Patriots can keep it close, but I just don't quite know if what we saw from them last week, I believe 29 points was the total against Buffalo that they scored, is going to be something we see again from them. They are averaging, again, only 14 points a game so far this season. Now we look at the Battle of the Meadowlands. The New York Jets are being hosted by the Giants. I'll be very curious to see what they do with the logo here, because this is both teams' home field. This is the Battle of New York, and it's in the Meadowlands. I mean, it does not get better than this. This is as big as it's going to be. I'm sure New York is buzzing right now through the sports media realm. This is also a very interesting matchup, because I don't really think there is a clear-cut favorite here. You have the Giants, who defensively have looked really good the last couple of weeks here. I've been really impressed. They've allowed only 21 points in these last 2 weeks and held both opponents under 300 yards in both games. Now, I do think that there's some injury concerns on both sides that could really decide the game in a way, just based off of who's available for them. When you look at the Jets, DJ Reed is hurt right now. Michael Carter, a couple guys in the secondary. Mekhi Becton's also dealing with an injury right now as well, and they already have like Elijah Vera Tucker and Dwayne Brown listed on the IR. Darren Waller and Saquon Barkley are questionable right now for the Giants. Daniel Jones' availability is up in the air. Andrew Thomas is also dealing with something. So a lot of offensive injuries for the Giants, and this is a group that has not really been great offensively, and the defense has been a big reason why they've been so competitive the last couple of weeks, because they're only averaging just over 12 points a game, which is wildly low considering we're talking NFL football here. But Jets are also coming off of a bye, somewhat healthy and feeling rested at the very least. And on top of that, prior to that bye week, they handed the Eagles their lone loss of the season. So they've got momentum on their side, I would say. So don't the Giants, like I said, defensively they've been rallying, but the offense has not been pretty. Giants are also one of the worst red zone offenses in the NFL, only getting in and converting on 33.3% of their attempts when they get in there. And then the Jets are also the fourth best red zone defense in the NFL, keeping teams out at a rate of about 36.8%. So I will say, allowing teams in, I should say, is the proper way to word that, 36.8% of the time. I do think that two things kind of decide this. Which quarterback performs better than the other, whether it's Tyrod Taylor or Zach Wilson, and as a whole, which offense outperforms the other. Both of these defenses, especially the last couple of weeks for the Giants, are pretty strong groups. The Jets, I would say, more so than the Giants, but again, the Giants have looked really good the last couple of weeks. It really comes down to whose offense can stand up, and if you'd rather Zach Wilson over Tyrod Taylor, who are you taking? I kind of feel like I'm leaning Zach Wilson a little bit, and that ultimately led me to picking the Jets in this game. I have them winning 20-13. Defensive affair. I just don't quite know if what I've seen from the offense of the Giants the last couple of weeks is going to amount to a big victory over a Jets team that at least has had some pretty solid success recently as of late, especially with their big win over the Eagles just a couple of weeks ago. If they did what they did to the Eagles, I would assume that they could probably have a better game against a Giants offense that has not really been great to this point this season. So both teams are at home. There's no home field advantage. It's a battle of the Meadowlands, and I think the Jets have a shot at coming out victorious again. 20-13, big win for them, and they go home the Kings of New York. Now we look at a game that is honestly very competitive and was a tough one for me to decide on. We have Jacksonville taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers right now are a very surprising 4-2 team. For whatever reason, they don't feel like they're 4-2 to me, but they are, and I think it just has to do with all the drama surrounding their offense right now, but they are 4-2, being carried by their defense. Jacksonville, on the other hand, started the season off a bit rocky, especially offensively, but I feel like they're really starting to hit their stride. It started in London, and now they've rattled off 3 straight wins. Big performances from Jacksonville. They're 5-2. They're also road warriors, 3-0 on the road. When you look at that, I mean, you gotta like what Jacksonville's doing right now. When you look at these two teams and you match them up, though, as far as injuries go, the Steelers, not too bad. Sounds like Cam Hayward's working his way back. I don't know if he's going to be available as soon as this week. I think that would be pretty early coming off the IR and then just immediately jumping right into the swing of things. I think he maybe needs another week, but it sounds like he's on his way back. And Pat Freiermuth is obviously out right now, but Levi Wallace is only the real big questionable guy that this Pittsburgh Steelers team has. And the reemergence of Deontay Johnson after he was dealing with an injury is also a big plus for the Steelers team. Whereas when you look at Jacksonville, Jacksonville, Walker Little is questionable. Tyson Campbell is questionable. Brandon Scherf, Zay Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Andre Sisco. There is a lot of injury concern to be had as far as the Jaguars going into this matchup. And I do think that the Steelers have a chance to capitalize on a Jacksonville Jaguars passing defense that's been allowing teams to move the football through the air. They are 31st in the NFL right now in yards allowed through the air at 273 yards. However, it could mean that, yes, they're throwing the football, not something that the Steelers have been great at, but they're definitely not going to be able to run the football, or at least it's going to be quite the challenge. The Jaguars are the 4th best run defense in the NFL right now, and for what it's worth, the Steelers averaging about 81 yards a game puts them in the bottom 4 of the NFL, and on top of that, they're averaging a measly 3.3 yards per carry on top of that. Pittsburgh can't really move the football on the ground, so they're gonna have to rely on Kenny Pickett and a passing game that has not been very consistent so far this season. But like I said, the reemergence of Deontay Johnson now, kind of a big deal for Pittsburgh in their passing attack, and I do think it's going to open some things up, especially for Kenny Pickett and George Pickens, who have shown some really good chemistry to this point. I have 2 big questions going into this game here, and I think this ultimately kind of decides how this game works out. My first one being if Pittsburgh can keep up with and also slow down a Jaguars offense that has gotten pretty hot the last few weeks, and can the Jacksonville Jaguars slow down Pittsburgh's vaunted pass rush? Pittsburgh right now is pressuring teams on 25.5% of dropbacks, which has them ranked at 9th in the NFL. And the Jaguars are only allowing sacks on about 16.2% of dropbacks and have about 16 sacks allowed. So they're like middle of the pack as far as that goes. You're going to need a really good performance from the offensive line of Jacksonville, and you have to hope that Trevor Lawrence's knee isn't really bothering him, because that is something that we've been keeping an eye on now for the last couple of weeks in Jacksonville. And you have to wonder, is he going to be able to maneuver in the pocket and be able to avoid some of the pressure that is inevitably going to be coming from the Pittsburgh Steelers? That being said, this is one that I'm really not certain about, and I by no means think this is a lock. This is a pick that is very up in the air for me, but I'm going to side with Jacksonville. Them being 3-0 on the road makes me feel a lot better about them. Had they been maybe like 2-1, 1-2 coming into this matchup here. And Pittsburgh has lost a game at home as well. I think with Jacksonville being comfortable as a team on the road, they can get the job done. Health is a concern for me, and I think it makes this game a lot closer. I'm still not sold on what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been doing offensively to this point this season, but I do think they're trending in the right direction, getting guys back, and this is going to really open up what they can do in Deontay Johnson. But I like the Jaguars. I think it's going to be a fight to the finish, but I have the Jaguars winning 24-20. I could see maybe like a last-minute touchdown coming from Trevor Lawrence in the face of some serious pressure, something along those lines, finding one of his stud wide receivers, whether it's Christian Kirk, whether it's Calvin Ridley, or maybe Travis Etienne. But this one's going to be a fight. I by no means think this is a short pick here. If the Pittsburgh Steelers come out victorious and move to 5-2, I kind of wouldn't be shocked, because I'm not going to be too surprised to see a passing attack maybe flourish with Deontay Johnson going up against a group like Jacksonville. This is a game I have no real confidence in. I would not be surprised to see Pittsburgh win, but I'm going to go with the Jaguars. Now we look at an NFC East matchup here, and this was a hot contest the first time around. We have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington Commanders here. However, these two teams, I would say, are in very different places the last time they played. Eagles went big. They added Kevin Byard from the Tennessee Titans this week here, and at a very cheap cost, like 2 late day 3 picks. I'm very surprised, considering Byard is a 2-time All-Pro safety in the NFL. It just kind of blew me away when I saw the actual compensation for that. As far as injuries go, to go on top of what's already been a porous offensive line and pass protection, Sam Cosmi's questionable right now. Curtis Samuel's also dealing with something. Cody Barton, questionable as well. On the Eagles side of things, they're not doing too bad. Same guys they've had out for a while now in the IR, but Bradley Roby and Milton Williams are questionable. But for the most part, this Eagles team's kind of getting healthy at the right time for the stretch run here. And the Eagles, if they have anything that they are harping on this week in practice, in film study, it is going to be taking advantage of a Commanders offensive line that has been downright awful when it comes to protecting the quarterback. They have allowed 40 sacks, which is, I believe, 3 ahead of the next worst team, which is the Giants at 37. And on top of that, when you look at what Philadelphia does when it comes to rushing the quarterback, they have 24 sacks right now, 3rd best in the NFL. They're pressuring 27.6% of the time on dropbacks, which is 6th in the NFL, and they do a lot of it rushing only 4 guys. The Eagles are about bottom half of the NFL, closer to the middle, but bottom half as far as blitzing is concerned. They can do some damage just rushing 4. First game, like I said, between these two, very fun to watch, very competitive. However, it feels like the Commanders have seriously regressed since that game between those two, especially along the offensive line, and the Eagles are kind of trending in the right direction. I know they took a tough loss to the Jets a few weeks ago, but beyond that, they have looked rock solid, and their offense really feels like they're finding themselves. And I have a feeling that with just the trends of both of these teams right now, I'm really favoring Philadelphia in this one. I have them winning 33-20. I don't think it's going to be nearly as good of a game offensively from the Commanders as it was the first time around. Like I said, I think there's been a massive step back on the offense, especially on that O-line, and Philadelphia is definitely healthier than they were the first time they met, and I think they take advantage. Philly wins. I have them winning 33-20. I think the Commanders may be able to find some points or two because they definitely identified a weakness in Philadelphia the first time they played, but I don't think they find nearly the same amount of success. Now we look at the Houston Texans going into Carolina in what is a trap game, I would argue, for the Houston Texans here. Panthers are 0-6. They're dealing with a litany of injuries. When you look at the injury report right now, it's unbelievable. On top of the guys that are already out in J.C. Horn, Shaq Thompson, Yetur Gross-Matos, Jeremy Chin, Brady Christensen, you also have questionable Xavier Woods, Laviska Shenault, Frankie Louvu, Taylor Moton, and Von Bell. I think I literally have 11 people listed as far as injuries are concerned for the Panthers right now. This is a team that's hurting and hurting badly. Texans, they do have some things that they're dealing with right now. Laramie Tunsil's questionable. Robert Woods is questionable, but Tank Dell sounds like he's going to be playing. You also have Nico Collins over there, 2 young stud wide receivers that CJ Stroud has enjoyed some serious success with so far this season. And I think the Texans have a really good chance at shining this week against a really hurt Carolina defense. Panthers do have a surprisingly solid passing defense, but I think that's something that's starting to regress as these injuries start to mount. So I don't quite know how their season averages stack up to where they are right now currently as a team health-wise. But this is a game that I think the Texans have a really good shot of winning at. And even if they're not finding the success that they probably should have against this Panthers defense through the air, the Texans can win on the ground. While they haven't been fantastic running the football, they're averaging about 88 yards a game. The Panthers let everyone run the football. They're 31st in the NFL, 144 yards per game allowed. The Texans have a very competent running back duo, I would argue, in Devin Singletary and in Dameon Pierce. So watch out for the running back tandem. If things aren't necessarily going their way through the air, I think they can take advantage on the ground. And this should be a game the Texans win fairly comfortably. I have them winning 27-17. Going into Carolina for that victory, but I would be seriously shocked if the Panthers put enough together to find their first victory of the season against the Texans. This is a team that I think is vastly improved from where they are last year, and as long as they can stay healthy and get some of their guys, if Laramie Tunsil plays and maybe Robert Woods gets back in the action as well, I'd feel pretty good about the Texans going up against a handful of teams in the NFL right now, not just the 0-6 Carolina Panthers. Moving into the late window now, we have the Cleveland Browns, a very unlikely 4-2, all things considered, going up against the Seattle Seahawks that is 4-2, as I would say is expected of them so far this season. Once again, we have no Deshaun Watson starting for the Browns, and we also finally saw some cracks in the Browns defense last week against an Indianapolis Colts team I did not expect to do the damage that they did. The Browns have Jerome Ford listed as doubtful right now. Kareem Hunt is questionable. David Njoku is questionable. Anthony Walker continues to be questionable. And the Seahawks do have some injuries themselves. Bobby Wagner, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant, Jordan Brooks, Uchenna Nwosu is actually going to be out for this game here. So both teams are dealing with it, but the fact that Kareem Hunt is questionable and Jerome Ford is doubtful to play is a pretty significant thing to point out, because the passing game by no means has been super strong in Cleveland. They are 31st in the NFL, and they've really banked on a strong rushing attack, and they do have a great offensive line, especially when it comes to running the football. But if you're going to lose Jerome Ford, who has been really good in Nick Chubb's absence, and Kareem Hunt, who was stepping up as well when he finally got brought back to the team, I really don't know how this team is going to find success on the offense. I mean, turnovers have been a huge issue for them. The Seahawks don't really turn the football over. They have 6 on the season to the 14 that the Cleveland Browns have, which is second most in the NFL right now. And with that uncertain running back room, Seattle's already a really good run defense. They're 6th best in the NFL. And if you're going to have I don't even know, like, hypothetically speaking, it sounds like there's no Jerome Ford, he's doubtful. If Kareem Hunt's also not playing, I don't know who the third string or fourth string running back, I guess, if you want to count Nick Chubb, is over there in Cleveland. I literally don't know. I did not look it up before this, and so I have no idea who it is. So if they can't run the football effectively, that's going to be a problem. Browns defense has been great, though, so I mean, of course, they can probably keep things close. I know they didn't look too great last week, and it should be a tough matchup for Seattle right now to move and score, but I will be interested in seeing how Seattle fares, because they've only allowed 13 sacks this entire season right now, and that's kind of been the big thing for Cleveland, is they've just been able to bring relentless pressure and get after the quarterback and bring them down. But Seahawks being a team that's protected Geno Smith pretty well to this point, I do think they can get a victory. I think the Browns could keep it close. I expect a lot of field goals out of Cleveland this week. I have the Seahawks winning 23-19, but it's going to be a tough matchup for Cleveland, especially being in Seattle with the 12s behind them. I think Seattle, slight favorite in this one. Give them the W. Next game we have ourselves is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos. The Broncos appear to be in full sell mode. There is a lot of conversation going on as far as Jerry Jeudy's concerned. I've even seen Cortland Sutton thrown around there and some other guys on defense as well. It looks like they're kind of selling off and looking towards next season. So quote unquote tanking, if you will. For what it's worth though, the last time these two teams met up in Kansas City, Chiefs only put up 19 points. Wasn't the prettiest game offensively for them. Broncos took advantage and they held them. So I do give the Broncos credit for that. However, offensively, against the Chiefs defense that has looked really good this season, they only had 8 points themselves. This is KC's game to lose. They have not lost to Denver since September of 2015. And Patrick Mahomes, obviously, with that being said, is undefeated against Denver. I don't see Denver winning this game. And I feel like every time I say that, it leads to an upset. But if there is one team that I can count on to pull off a victory against a lesser opponent that has not beaten them in almost 10 years now, we're going on year 8. If the Chiefs win this game, that'll be 8 years running that they have not lost to the Denver Broncos. I don't really see the Broncos getting it done this week. Gonna be a tough ask. They're only 1-3 at home, so it's not like home field advantage has really done anything for them this year. The Chiefs are also Road Warriors themselves. They're 3-0, so they have not lost at home. Their only loss was actually at home, funny enough, in their season opener. So Chiefs are hot. Even if their offense has been up or down by some people's standards, they're still 6th best in the NFL in scoring. 25.4 a game scored. For all the talk of the defense, they're carrying the team this year. Chiefs are still well in the top 10 of scoring, and they're only allowing 15 points a game. Good luck to Denver. Be shocked to see them win this game. Obviously, anything's possible, but I like KC. I have them winning 27-10. I think KC's offense gets rolling, and I feel like they might have a slight chip on their shoulder because of just how poorly they fared against Denver the first time around. I think the Chiefs will have a little bit more that they want to prove in this game here. Now we're looking at the Baltimore Ravens heading into Arizona to take on the Cardinals in a game where Baltimore comes in red hot after a slaughtering of the Detroit Lions last week. I feel like that's might even be understating the victory that they had in Detroit, or against Detroit last week, excuse me. This is another one of those games. Cardinals have absolutely no business winning this game right now. They are just on a losing streak. When you match up the statistics, I don't think that there is really anything that the Cardinals have over the Baltimore Ravens right now, aside from looking at some of the numbers I have listed in my notes here. Takeaway differential. Baltimore is sitting at -1. The Cardinals are sitting at +3. So that is the one number out of everything that I have listed here on my tablet as something that's over the Ravens. But when you look at scoring, points allowed, yards per game, whether it's passing, whether it's rushing, whether it's what's allowed on the ground or through the air, this is the Ravens' game to lose. I would be very shocked for the Ravens to fall to a trap game like the Arizona Cardinals. If someone wants to take some wild odds, yes, they did beat the Dallas Cowboys a few weeks ago. I don't think that the coaching that they receive in Baltimore would allow for something like that to happen. The Ravens are not a team to sleepwalk into a trap game the way some other teams can sometimes. Baltimore should not lose this game. I have them winning 27-13. You might get a touchdown out of the Cardinals this game. I'd be kind of shocked if that even happens. Or I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't happen, I should say. But I have the Baltimore Ravens winning very handedly. They should not be losing this game. Now we look at the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers, led by Sam Darnold. We have no Brock Purdy in this game here. Surprisingly enough, it sounds like Purdy was dealing with a concussion towards the end of the game, and following his concussion, as I did see on the X machine, Brock Purdy was 2 for 6 with 2 interceptions following the play that people assume he got concussed on. So maybe that is a slight answer as to what happened to Brock Purdy late in that game and why his play regressed so poorly right at the end. 49ers also come in this game with Deebo Samuel not playing, and Trent Williams is also listed as questionable. He did not play for the 49ers last week, so obviously a big couple of pieces missing there on top of their quarterback not playing as well. Bengals come in off a bye, feeling pretty good. They're pretty hot right now. 3-3. Orlando Brown is questionable. Akeem Davis-Gaither is questionable, but overall a fairly clean bill of health. And I would assume that Orlando Brown is going to be able to suit up coming off of this bye week. Very healthy roster. The 49ers severely struggled last week to get pressure against the Vikings passing attack, which was allowed to move for 378 yards through the air. They didn't get a single sack. Bengals have only allowed about 2 sacks a game, which is pretty good for the most part. They're 9th in the NFL in sacks allowed right now in 14, although that number is kind of skewed because they had the bye week and there's a handful of teams that have yet to go through their bye, but the numbers are what the numbers are, at least right now. I think that with no Brock Purdy, no Deebo Samuel, and if Trent Williams does not play, the Bengals have a real chance at winning this football game. I feel like their offense is starting to find itself again. I think with an entire week off to let Joe Burrow continue to recover from his calf injury that he's clearly been dealing with throughout this season so far, and allowing them more practice time to get themselves ready to go. They've now had 2 weeks to prepare for this 49ers team. I like the Bengals in this one here. I think they get the job done. Opportunity has kind of presented itself for Cincinnati to get a big win over an opponent that just a few weeks ago looked like a legitimate juggernaut in the NFL, and people were questioning when they would even lose a football game. Now they're on a 2-game losing streak. You're coming off a bye, having won a game coming into the bye. Give me the Bengals, 23-17. I think they get the job done. Now for Sunday Night Football, we're looking at the Chicago Bears and the Los Angeles Chargers in a game that is honestly a pretty interesting matchup here, because I don't think that either team is better than the other by any means or any large stretch of the imagination. This is a very interesting matchup here. Tyson Bagent came in, stepped in for Chicago, did a really good job. Running game was phenomenal for the Bears last week, and the running game has been their bread and butter for the majority of the season. It will be a tough matchup for Chicago going up against the Chargers, who are 11th in the NFL as far as rushing yards per game is concerned. But like I said, the run game is the strength of this Bears team. And for what it's worth, it's somewhat of a different offense with Tyson Bagent under center. You're going up against a Chargers defense that, as far as defending the pass goes, is not good. They allow about 310 yards a game. They're 32nd in the NFL. They have a legit shot at winning this game. On paper, the Chargers are the better team. Absolutely. On paper alone. But from the performances we have seen from the Chargers to this point in the season, by no means do I think they're some heavy favorite, even with this game being at home in LA. Not much of a home field advantage. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if, as it has been for the last few years now with LA Chargers playing in SoFi, there's more Bears fans, or at least enough that it makes it feel like a neutral site game or something like that. But I mean, breaking down some of the more general numbers, the Bears are 13th in scoring. The Chargers are 11. As far as points allowed per game is concerned, 28th for the Bears, 25th for the Chargers. Not much of a difference there by like a couple points at most. I don't know how you could sit here and confidently pick one team over the other. Basically, I am choosing this game off of who has the better quarterback. And I'm going to go with the Chargers. I'll take Justin Herbert over Tyson Bagent. But both teams are very evenly matched in this. And I don't think by any means the Chargers are a heavy favorite. I have the Chargers winning 28-21. I could see maybe struggles to run the football against the Chargers run defense that's been pretty good to kind of be the thing that kills the Bears in this game. But would I be shocked if this game, for whatever reason, winds up being like a 30-30 something barn burner affair because neither team can defend the pass? Absolutely not. I would not be shocked. But I'll take the team with the better quarterback. Give me the Chargers, 28-21. And lastly, for Monday Night Football, to wrap things up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, who just got blown out by those Bears we were discussing a second ago, going up against a Lions team that just got blown out by a Ravens team we discussed a few minutes ago. Both of these teams coming off of blow-off losses, looking to bounce back. The Raiders come in with some injuries to keep an eye on here. Nate Hobbs, Divine Diablo, Jimmy Garoppolo, all listed as questionable right now. Lions have Khalif Raymond, David Montgomery, Jonah Jackson, and Jerry Jacobs as guys that they're dealing with some injuries. If Jimmy G is not starting in this game, though, I have no thought in my mind that could lead me to buying into a Raiders victory. Brian Hoyer is probably an excellent quarterback when it comes to being a backup. Holding the clipboard, being in the ear of whoever it is in front of him to help them out and leading that quarterback to success. As far as his on-the-field play is concerned, I was about 7.5 minutes into that game when the Raiders were playing last week against the Bears and was thinking to myself, my God, why are the Raiders not starting Aiden O'Connell? We know what Brian Hoyer is at this point, and he shouldn't be starting. At least just roll the dice with Aiden O'Connell and see what you got. I know his first regular season outing wasn't fantastic, but go with the rookie, see what he can do. Because Jimmy Garoppolo is already dealing with injuries. He's not playing for you. I mean, what else is new? Story of Jimmy Garoppolo's career. This is a great opportunity for a bounce back game for the Detroit Lions. They're averaging about 25 points a game, which that number did take a hit because of their blowout loss to the Ravens last week. That number would be a little bit higher if you took that Ravens game out, whereas the Raiders are barely averaging 16 points a game right now. So for what it's worth, I think the Lions are the better team. They definitely are due for a bounce back game following their very shocking blowout loss to the Ravens last week. The Raiders are in not a great spot right now. For them to have, I'm not surprised that the Bears came away with a win despite me picking the Raiders to win last week. I was just kind of surprised to watch them have their doors completely blown off of them. So if Jimmy Garoppolo's not starting and if it's Brian Hoyer again, absolutely not. And I'm picking so far in advance that I don't know for certain, and I'm sure that'll change in the next few days, but just based off what I know right now, I can't risk the rolling the dice on Brian Hoyer again. Give me the Detroit Lions. I think they get a win 28-13. Again, this is the idea that we see Brian Hoyer again, and if not, I don't know how healthy Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be with that back injury, so I don't know how effective that offense would be even if Jimmy Garoppolo is playing. And I think that the Lions come in with some serious chips on their shoulder following what happened last week. I think Dan Campbell is going to have his guys ready to go. 28-13, give me a Lions victory. That being said, though, those are my picks for Week 8 of the NFL. If you made it to the end of the video, I greatly appreciate you. Make sure you comment your picks and predictions down below. But that is it for me. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.